CTV News international security expert Jeanne Meserve joins us now. Jeanne, good evening and thanks for your time. So this is a serious event at a time when tensions between US and Cuba are high. What really went down there? Tell us more.
Well, we don't know what went down, and that's why the U.S. government, as much as they have negative feelings about Cuba, is being very circumspect in what it says at this point. We don't know exactly what this boat was doing in Cuban waters, who was on board. We don't know if the Cuban account is accurate, that they were so close to the Cuban coast and that people on the U.S. registered boat fired first. All of those are things that they're going to want to sort out before they start commenting much publicly. But as you said, a very tense time in U.S.-Cuban relations. There has always been tension for 67 years since Fidel Castro came to power, but they have been heightened under the Trump administration for a couple of reasons. One, the Dunroe Doctrine, an insistence by President Trump that he wants to pay attention to this hemisphere and what's happening in this hemisphere. And Cuba was reliant largely on oil from Venezuela. Those oil shipments to Cuba stopped after the U.S. captured President Maduro. The U.S. has also pressured Mexico to halt its shipments of oil to Venezuela, and it has done so. Although I might note that today it was announced by the White House that certain companies might be allowed to ship some Venezuelan oil to Cuba. But in the meantime, the situation in Cuba has become even more dire than usual because fuel is in such short supply. Flights in and out of the country have virtually stopped, which has meant a lot of critical things like medicines have not been able to get in, and the tourism industry, on which Cuba relies somewhat, has been devastated. So these are very tough times and very tense times. We'll see what happens as we get more information.
Okay, let's talk about what we know so far. We understand that at least 4 people have been killed. This speedboat was registered in Florida. What do we know about this area, Jeanne, and the waters between Cayo Falcone and Miami, and the kind of activity that takes place between this region and the waters?
There is always a lot of activity in this water, particularly when people are trying to get out of Cuba. I was in Cuba in 1999 during the Elian Gonzalez episode. I don't know if you remember that, but it was the young 5-year-old boy who was found floating by the U.S. Coast Guard, brought to the U.S., and there was a custody battle between the United States and where there were relatives, and the father who was still in Cuba. Eventually, he went back to Cuba. But that story sort of crystallized for many Americans just how many people were leaving Cuba and trying to come to the U.S. And the numbers in recent years have really been high because the economic situation there is so tough. I have read that about 1 million people have tried to leave Cuba for the U.S. in recent years.
Okay, we'll leave it at that tonight as we wait for more information. CTV News international security expert Jeanne Meserve, thank you for your time, Jeanne.
Certainly.